I was born in the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains, in a village where the mist hung low and the wolves sang before dawn. My name is of no importance now. Names were meaningless in those days. Only fear had meaning, and the name that brought fear to every hearth and hall was Vlad Dracula, the voivode of Wallachia, the man history would come to call Vlad the Impaler. I served him for 6 years. 6 winters of blood, cold, and silence. I survived when better men did not. I first met the prince in 1456, when he reclaimed his throne from the Hungarian-backed pretenders. He was not a large man, not at first glance. Slender, sharp-featured, with eyes like oil on water, dark and shifting, never resting in one place too long. But there was a presence about him. When he entered a room, men stopped breathing. I was 15 then, apprenticed to the steward of his court in Târgoviște. My duties were simple: clean his boots, polish the silver, and keep my head lowered. The boyars who whispered in the great hall called him the son of the dragon, half in jest, half in terror. His father, Vlad Dracula, had worn the symbol of the Order of the Dragon, sworn to defend Christendom against the Turks. But Vlad, the son, had been shaped by darker fires. He had been a prisoner of the Ottomans for years as a child. When he returned, he was not a boy at all. Something of that captivity had hollowed him out. It was said he had watched impalements before he could read, and had learned that fear was a sharper weapon than any blade. In those early days, Wallachia was a land of chaos, nobles plotting, peasants starving, and Turkish raiders burning villages at the border. Vlad saw rot everywhere and vowed to cut it out, no matter how deep he had to dig. The first purge began not long after his coronation feast. I remember it clearly, because I was the one who cleaned the great hall after the blood was scrubbed from the floor. He had invited the boyars, the same men who had betrayed his father, to a banquet in their honor. Wine flowed, music played, and laughter echoed through the stone halls. Then, as the candles burned low, Vlad raised his goblet and asked, in his calm, deliberate way, "How many princes have you served?" The old men, fat with privilege, stumbled over their answers. Some said 2, others 3. Vlad nodded slowly, smiling that thin, cold smile of his. Then, "You have served too many." The soldiers came in through the side doors, armed with pikes. Before dawn, the boyars were marched outside, chained and impaled on wooden stakes. Their families were sent to work on a new fortress in the mountains' Poenari Castle, where most died hauling stone. That was the beginning of Vlad's reign of terror and, in his mind, justice. I tell you this not as gossip, but as memory. I was there, holding a torch as the first stake went into the ground. The screams carried for miles. Some of the soldiers crossed themselves. Others laughed nervously. Vlad watched in silence. He said nothing, only stared at the forest of bodies swaying in the dawn wind. Then he whispered to no one in particular, "Now they will learn order." To him, cruelty was not madness. It was policy. Over the years, I came to understand his methods, though I could never agree with them. He ruled through terror as discipline. If a thief was caught stealing, he was impaled by the roadside, left as a warning. If a village harbored Ottoman spies, he burned it to ash. Yet, for all his brutality, the land grew safe. Merchants traveled without fear. Women walked unmolested. One story true, I think, tells of a golden cup left in the town square of Târgoviște. No one dared to steal it. Fear kept the peace. But fear also eats the soul. One winter night, I saw him alone in the great hall, seated before the fire. His armor was still splattered with blood from the day's executions. I approached quietly, carrying wine. He turned to me and said, almost softly, "Do you think I am cruel, boy?" I froze. The wrong answer meant death. I said, "My lord, I think you are just." He looked into the flames and said, "Justice is mercy for the living. I am mercy for the dead." Then he laughed, not joyfully, but bitterly, like a man laughing at his own damnation. That was when I realized Vlad was not a monster pretending to be human. He was a human who had become his own legend trapped inside it. When the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II invaded Wallachia in 1462, Vlad did not retreat. He could have bent the knee, as other princes did. Instead, he waged a war of shadows. We burned the fields before the Turks arrived. We poisoned wells. We left entire villages empty save for impaled corpses. I remember one morning when we stood on a hill, overlooking the valley near Târgoviște. The Turks had camped there the night before. What they found at dawn was a forest not of trees but of bodies, 20,000 stakes. Men, women, even soldiers still wearing their armor, all impaled in perfect rows. The stench was unbearable. Even the crows avoided it. When the Sultan saw it, he turned back toward Constantinople. Vlad's tactics had worked. Terror had become defense. But at what cost? That night, he stood beside me, staring into the mist, his cloak fluttering like a shadow. He said, quietly, "Better to rule through fear than die forgotten." I wanted to ask him if he feared anything himself, but I did not. By the end of that campaign, Wallachia was bleeding. Our allies abandoned us. Our people starved, and even the wolves grew thin. Vlad's own brother, Radu the Handsome, sided with the Ottomans and turned the boyars against him. The night the uprising began, I heard shouts echoing through the corridors. Betrayal had come at last. We fled north, through the forests, pursued by both Turks and traitors. The snow turned red under our boots. I remember his face that night, pale, furious, but not afraid. He fought like a demon, cutting down men twice his size, even wounded. He would not yield, but numbers overwhelmed us. I was captured. He vanished into the mountains. For months, I rotted in a dungeon, expecting death. Instead, I was released, exchanged in some treaty I did not understand. I never saw him again. Years later, I heard he had been killed in battle, his head sent to Constantinople in a jar of honey. Some say it was a decoy, that he escaped and lived in secret. Others claim his soul still wanders the Carpathians, hunting those who betrayed him. I cannot say, but I know. This evil is a word too simple for him. Vlad the Impaler was a man of his time, brutal, in a brutal age. To the Turks, he was a devil. To his people, a savior. To me, he was both master and curse. I saw him pray before executions, whispering Latin verses for the souls of those he killed. He believed, truly believed, that he was chosen by God to cleanse his land of corruption, that his cruelty was divine justice. And perhaps that is what made him so terrifying. Not the blood, not the impalements, not even the fear, but the conviction. A madman kills for pleasure. A tyrant kills for power. But Vlad killed for order. He believed, down to his marrow, that without terror, civilization would crumble. Now, when I walk through those same forests, I sometimes see the ghostly outlines of stakes in the fog. I see the hill where the boyars were impaled, now covered in wildflowers. Time has buried the screams, but not the memory. People call him a monster. But monsters do not build roads or bring peace to a land divided by greed. Monsters do not weep alone by the fire when no one is watching. I think he wanted to be good, but goodness in his world was a luxury no ruler could afford. If you asked me whether he was evil, I would say this: he was necessary. A storm that burned away rot, leaving behind a land that feared him more than it feared death. And perhaps that is why he endures, not as a man of flesh, but as an idea. Even now, centuries later, when I hear the wind through the pines of Wallachia, I can almost hear his voice again. Order, boy. There must always be order. And I wonder, in a world still ruled by fear and ambition, if maybe, in his terrible way, he was right. The legacy of Vlad the Impaler remains divided between hero and horror, savior and sadist. But to those who served him, he was something else entirely. A man who tried to bring order to a world built on chaos, and paid for it with his soul. And so, the legend of Vlad III of Wallachia the Impaler endures. To some, he was a monster, born of cruelty. To others, a savior forged by fire and vengeance. History does not speak with one voice, but the echoes remain. If this story drew you into the mist and blood of a forgotten age, then let your voice be heard. Leave a comment below. Tell us, was Vlad a hero or a tyrant? Like this video if you'd stand your ground with Wallachia. Subscribe to The Short Historical for more tales where myth and truth meet steel.